Hello and welcome to Moonknighting. This is the Moon Knight reaction show from the Comic Crush. This is episode 2. I'm Paul. With me is Liz.
Hello.
Hello, Liz. You doing okay today?
Yep, you're doing swell. Looking
Good,
forward
good.
to talking about Moon Knight.
Another exciting episode. Just like to point out quickly, as we did last week, that our logo and show's title comes from Ahmed Rafet, who is a very talented artist who's available for commissions, I believe. And you should definitely take a look at his comics, Gorilla My Dreams and the Astro Nudes, both of which are available through him, I believe. You can check out the link to his Twitter below and do check his stuff out because he's very talented, as I did spend quite a bit of time saying last week, because I just really love the guy's work. And his Moon Knight stuff has been superb, as is the show's thumbnail and title. He very kindly let us use those. Ahmed, we're very grateful. Thank you. So, Liz, diving straight in this week. It was a fascinating episode, I thought.
Yes.
Very, we're moving into a quite different feel from the last one. How did you feel about it, though?
Yeah, I think this is kind of an exposition heavy episode, but not in a bad way.
Right.
I think that this show, it has a lot of information that, it needs to kind of feed you to move forward with the story. And I felt like this episode, it had a lot of heavy lifting to do in that department. Introducing you to the concept of Mark, introducing you to the concept of Khonshu and Harrow's relationship to Khonshu, and so many other things. Mark's character history, that we're finding out as Stephen finds out.
And that I feel there's some quite surprising elements in this that I wasn't expecting, I've got to say. So I didn't know that Layla, was going to turn out to be Mark's wife.
Mrs. Mark Spector, yeah.
Mrs. Mark Spector, yeah. And I thought May Callumway was, like, she did a really great job. I really liked her performance. And there was a bigger thing a bit later on that I'm sure we'll get into. But picking up the threads from last week, Mark's now fired from his job. It's very interesting because we are now almost definitively moving into the stuff laid down by Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood in their run. Right. Like I feel that, like, we're definitely in that, although the environment has changed substantially from the stuff they did in the comic. I feel that nearly everything in this episode kind of comes from their run, really.
Right, in a totally different way. Different way. But yeah, I can certainly see where this episode, kind of it draws from a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
In the way that,
so I'm going to move a bit because my name tag seems to be I don't know what's happened with the camera this week. I'm in a really funny position.
But I felt like certainly there were things like, that seemed like, paid a lot of homage to that run.
Conceptually, at least, and even at the beginning of the episode where Mark's getting fired, he's kind of been told, there's this sort of facility, this hospital, and they've really helped us before, and we think they can help you. Which in that particular run is, of course, a front for Ahmet. And it is where Mark finds himself. So I just felt that there was a lot of stuff, and again, we'll get into it as we go. There was a lot of stuff there, and going to the storage locker and figuring out, actually, there's this kind of war chest of literal, weapons and money that he's got.
There's a bed in there, you know. He's obviously
which means he's been living in there. Now,
yeah.
I don't know if any of you have ever owned a storage locker. I've gone through a couple in my life for various reasons, and one thing they do ask you to do is sign something that says you're not holding any weapons or explosives in there.
And probably that you're not sleeping there either, you know.
I guess he's violated the terms of that. And also, I don't think any storage locker looks like that. So,
yeah, it was pretty shiny in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Very, very well appointed as a storage locker. But I kind of like that scene, and of course we get a visit from Khonshu.
And in that scene, we get a lot of the, you know, sort of back and forth between Mark and Steven.
Yeah. And, you know, Mark telling him that, hey, I'm the avatar for Khonshu, and, you know, but it doesn't explain to Steven who he is, because we're now in an interesting arena psychologically, because I guess we have to accept that Steven has been created by Mark.
Right. Although in the, you know, with the show making so many big changes, you know, we don't have to accept that completely. We have to, you know, we can still sort of, you know, it could go the other way because they're just making, you know, kind of these big broad changes. Maybe Stephen Grant is the original persona in this case.
Could be, yeah.
Although I would put my money on it being Mark, of course.
Yeah, because that's certainly the way it was in the comics, and even going back to the early Doug Mensch stuff, where it was, you know, the Stephen Grant persona is a person, a millionaire created by Mark. When he's finished making all his money being a mercenary, he just swaps identities, and that's before the DID stuff comes in. I mean, what's interesting is the struggle. I find every episode the character of Stephen, despite being annoying, really grows on me.
Right. You know, he is quite lovable in his way, you know.
And I saw a tweet today from Ellie Eagleton, funny enough, saying, you know, I really hate Stephen Grant. She goes, I want to like him, but it's really funny.
It is interesting because I feel like amongst the you know, obviously, you know, I work in a comic shop, and I have, you know, I chat to all my customers, you know, about the shows, you know, sort of week.
That's funny. I work at a comic shop too.
Yeah, I know. Funny that. But it seems to me like a lot of the kind of real like Moon Knight fans that I've been chatting to, a lot of them are more polarized by the, you know, by the Stephen character.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people, I guess because it's so far removed. I'm just going to try adjusting the screen here. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah, I think that's better.
That a bit easier. I'm just worried it's going to tip over. Sorry, I'm using a slightly different laptop now, and I'm a bit worried it's just going to fall over. But still, as long as it's just my face that disappears, we'll be fine. There's, yeah, like.
Okay, so here's a little bit of the feedback that I was getting, you know, just you know, to put it out there, you know, so one of the criticisms I heard is that it's too far into like slapstick and too reliant on jokes to feel like the Moon Knight of the comics, which I can I can certainly see that standpoint.
The thing is it's an interesting argument, because I personally, when I go and see comic movies, I don't want the comics.
Right.
I want them to take aspects of the comics, and here's where the problem, the conundrum lies for me. I want them to take characteristics from the characters, and certainly the inner life of the characters, and try and put some of that on screen. But I think this works just fine for me, because I do see them as separate people, and I am kind of that thing where it's just like, yeah, one of these guys has got to go at some point, and it's probably going to be Stephen. And I honestly thought they'd have it done by the end of the first episode.
Really? Okay.
I thought they would have got rid of him because of the accent, and I admit I didn't like the accent in the trailers. I'm kind of getting used to it. But I honestly thought they were going to kill that off straight away, but they didn't. They've kind of, fair play to them. They've let it play out. And I wonder if he's going to feature more in the series than we either of us.
I mean, my interpretation that it was going to be Stephen and Mark right the way through.
Okay,
and possibly possibly Jake Lockley,
but
possibly
I mean, is that before you figured it would be the sort of cool blimey governor, that sort of stuff? Because I think that's what people have a problem with, really. I think if he had a different or better English accent, people wouldn't have a problem with it. But I think people have a problem with it because it's too Mary Poppins for them.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of Americans won't be able to tell the difference. I think it's
okay, yeah,
it's going to be more Brits who are going to be coming down on the accent. That's just and so
yeah.
So that is, and a lot of the little the things we were talking about last week, like the London geography, the flat, things like that. I think that's going to be much more of an English concern than it is going to be for the wider the international audience.
Yeah.
But no, I really did. I figured that the show would feature his other identities throughout. I didn't see, because it is like the core aspect of Moon Knight, or one of the real core aspects. So I didn't see Steven, sort of going away anytime soon. I feel like Steven is, and the way they've written him for the show, is like your everyman, taking you through it, taking you through all these wild concepts, and experiencing with surprise the things the audience need to learn. So I don't know that it would work to remove him, from the picture.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I find, but I think the audience would accept it if he was gone, just because we've got Mark, and that's kind of really what people want. So I think they're going to kind of minimize Stephen a bit, despite this episode. One of the things that's always interested me about Moon Knight is, or at least this interpretation of Moon Knight is, he stands completely apart from every other character in the MCU, because they're all aware. When Peter Parker wakes up in the morning, he's aware he's Spider-Man. When Steve Rogers comes home at the end of the day, he's aware he's Captain America. But Stephen is not aware, really, that he's Moon Knight, and not aware until now that there's this whole other life, or possibly more other lives, out there for him. And that is an entirely unique thing. And I don't know how. I mean, it's not unique in comics, but it's fairly unique in comics.
Yeah.
There aren't many. I'm sure our viewers can tell us, are there any other characters who don't know that they're superheroes, or perhaps started off their series not knowing they were heroes? Do let us know in the comments. I would love to hear from you, and just we could try and maybe talk about that in a future episode. Miracle Man is the one that I kind of go back to with Kid Miracle Man.
Right.
Young Miracle, I can't remember which one it was, Young Miracle Man, Kid Miracle Man, who hides his sort of secret identity. Like he lets the super being version of himself come out and grow up and run the company that he owns, but buries the normal version of himself psychologically inside his head, which was a fascinating conceit at the time. And,
right.
It's like that, a real spin on the whole Billy Batson Shazam thing. So yeah, like that. I'd be interested to see how that plays out, and guys, let us know. Are there heroes that don't know who they are, villains who don't know that they are? That's what I'd like to know from you guys. So please do drop a comment. Yeah, I mean, his wife appears.
Right, and that's another big change from the comics. I mean, so the character of Layla, as far as I know, was invented for the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously in the
To the best
comics,
of my knowledge.
his love interest is Marlene,
Mm.
who's a very different character to Layla. So they've really, they've really just kind of made their stamp and say, we're doing, we're doing this completely our way.
Yeah.
And she's a very welcome introduction, very, and it does seem, with the interactions he has with Layla, that Mark is the one who actually really must be in control for the better portion of time, if he's had this whole life, as she said, our adventures, our life together, they have a marriage, they have this whole history together. So it seems as though Mark is probably the dominant personality. And it makes you wonder, how long has Steven, has the Steven persona existed? How has he managed to balance, sort of having a job, having a life, seemingly of his own, even though he clearly doesn't have any friends, and doesn't speak to his mother, even though, he's always trying to call and, always gets the answering machine. And, so it's,
well, we see him have one conversation with her in the first episode.
No, we see him having a conversation with his answering machine, or her answering machine.
I took that, like, there's one call he has where he leaves a message,
watch
but then
it again.
later on in the episode there's okay, well, I'll do what the boss says. I'll watch it again.
Yeah, watch it again. As far as I could tell, he is just talking to the machine in the way that he talks to Crawley, as though Crawley is talking back to him.
Right.
Yeah,
and that was an interesting scene as well, where he sort of hugs Crawley, and you actually get some movement and reaction.
Yeah, a tiny little bit of,
so it'd be interesting to see if that. Again, I don't really expect them to do Crawley in the full way you see in the comics.
No.
And maybe we will get Marlene, and as I said last time, we'll get Marlene, we'll get Duchamp, Frenchie in some form, if not this form. I definitely think we're going to get Frenchie.
I hope so. I don't know. I don't know if that was just the mention of his name was just a wink and a nod, but.
Well, there is, again, we talked about last week, that there is an actor they hired, but who sadly passed away after the show was completed. And
well, he's not meant to play Frenchie. He was meant to play Midnight Man.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me know. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm curious to see what comes of that. But with only 4 episodes to go, it's you've got to cram that stuff in. And I would like to see the next episodes kind of shift a bit wider and show us some more supporting cast and things. But like this one moves along interestingly enough, going, now you start to see the kind of true scope of the cult and things. I mean, all right, we saw all the armed guys last time in the sort of Austrian or German village, but now we're kind of seeing how Harrow is pushing his way into the community, and those scenes I think were fascinating, because this is a lot of what cults do, is they will go and do charitable work and nice things for people,
right, and improve the health of this community, which, as he described, had been the worst neighborhood around, and now people don't lock their doors at night because they're busy planting their organic vegetable gardens and making lentil soup for everybody, and everything's great.
And what he's offering is not a bad thing.
No,
that part of it, that community element, and I think that's what makes him so persuasive. I still think, like, in that scene, as you go through that scene, because it's a long sequence, and it's the sequence that obviously it is the biggest chunk of the episode, because it's up 2 and 3 really of the whole episode. I still think that Ethan Hawke is doing the most interesting acting work. I think Oscar Isaac is doing he's doing good stuff, and he is doing good stuff. And I really felt this complete sympathy for him when he kind of almost breaks down and cries when he's talking to Crawley about he wants to figure out if he's mad or not, and like that is, you know, that was a lovely little scene. But I still think Ethan Hawke is doing the heavy lifting. Like he's doing the real subtle stuff, and
he's very sinister in this.
yeah,
You
and
know,
he's having to do completely unshowy work. He's having to be very quiet, and very inside himself to do it. And I love the sequence with Khonshu saying things to Mark and Harrow going, "Oh, is he telling you to do this? He's telling you to kill me now? Or is he doing
you don't
this?"
have to listen to him.
Yeah,
Yeah. He keeps reminding him, you don't have to listen to him. You don't have to do what everything's, you know, what he says.
yeah.
And you know, I thought it was really fascinating that, you know, his background with Khonshu is that he was the previous Avatar.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was a very interesting development to me.
That I wasn't expecting.
No.
Because I'm not sure if we've dealt with this in the comics before, with the you know, other avatars of Khonshu. You know,
off the top of my head, I can't think.
I kind of hark back to the previous Iron Fists that we got in Ed Brubaker Matt Fraction stuff in Iron Fist.
I just thought about that too. Funnily enough, when he was, you know,
it's akin to that, I guess. And you know, it opens up a lot of interesting questions. It's like, well, why did you stop? And it makes me wonder if it's the gods who are kind of at war with each other, and they're kind of, you know, they'll steal avatars or you know, they're like, they become cults of their own. You know, they become cult leaders of their own.
Right. Yeah. So how did it become that, you know, that Harrow went from being Khonshu's avatar to Amit's?
Yeah. And you know, we still have this thing with the scarab that's the kind of homing beacon, the compass to Amit's tomb that they want to release. And do you think there's any sense yet that this is happening in the MCU that we know? Because I still don't feel it is.
There hasn't been an indication that it is, but like at the same time, it easily could be, or it, you know, or it might not be. But I think for the sake of the show at the moment, I think it's better to kind of keep it separate, you know, the way they did with the Netflix stuff, where occasionally there would be like a wink and a nod, but largely it felt like its own thing, its own little, you know, sort of world. And, you know, I think that works for the development of this character, because it's someone we haven't met before. I think it might just be distracting to, you know, to throw in, you know, sort of too many nods to the larger MCU just yet.
Yeah.
We're only 2 episodes in, you know?
Yeah. And I'm kind of dubious, but I just wonder if some of this stuff is taking place somewhere else, and you know, but again, it's one of my theories, so it'll be wrong.
Remains to be seen, but yeah.
But you know, I started thinking about history and in Egypt and things like that whilst watching this episode, and there is that thing that I always quote, which is about how any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But I'm wondering if you can also apply the same thing to ancient history as well, because it's so unknowable. And there are still, I caught this clip on YouTube or something. It's like a YouTube reel. I can't remember what it was. It was of a clip of a longer show where they were talking to like an Egyptologist, and they were talking about one of the tombs where they found these giant pillars that weigh tons, but they were built on top of a platform, and they were just like, look, there's no physical way to have got those up there back then. You could have had a bunch of people on a ramp, but because once you get to a certain amount over 10 degrees, it becomes impossible, regardless of how many people you've got at the top pulling the thing or down below pushing the thing, to be able to sustain that rise. And you know, these things weigh tons, like 15 tons. They weigh like, I think the guy said it was something like the equivalent of about 15 SUVs. So you start to get into some really weird stuff with Egyptology and the history of Egypt. I mean, I'm sure someone who knows more can come on and tell us and correct me, and I'm happy to be corrected. But there is some bizarre stuff, and history must start to seem like magic. And it's just so removed from anything really. And if you look back at in time, I think a lot of stuff in history would seem utterly bizarre to us because you're following an entire different set of rules, and especially in a culture where at that time you were looking at a form of mysticism as your guiding principles. Like, what a thing it must have been to be around in a time when people believed in magic, because you would have lived from the earth, and you would have your dreams would have guided you, and like I like this episode actually really made me start thinking about that. I don't know, I go off on fucking like I'm off in space half the time, so it was really fascinating to kind of see some stuff start to kind of germinate there, and and of course we get a great kind of action scene here, and this episode also reveals this very strange thing, which is no one else can see the things that Mark is battling.
Yes, that was something I wasn't expecting, actually. That in fact it seems like even Layla could not see these creatures that were chasing Mark. Like, she kind of knew they were there, but she could not physically see them. So perhaps is it that only the Fist of Khonshu or an avatar of Khonshu or an avatar of one of the gods can actually see these creatures because they've been touched by Khonshu? I don't know. That's kind of the way it seems to be playing out. And also it does appear that he has super strength when he's in, his Moon Knight guise. It seems as though the suit, in terms of the show, is, the title of the episode was Summon the Suit.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a magic suit. In the comics, from what I understand, it is, it's just a vigilante suit that he wears. Right. Whereas here, it's like he can turn it on and off, sort of.
And it seems to respond to his imagination rather than, because what's interesting is he fights the version of Moon Knight we see in this isn't Mark Spector as Moon Knight; it's Stephen Grant as Moon Knight.
Right. And when they, when she's encouraging him to summon the suit and he's finally pressed to do so when he's falling out the window, he doesn't come up with the Moon Knight suit. He comes up with the Mr. Knight suit. Yeah. Which was, again, unexpected. That was not how the way I sort of expected that costume to come about. I wasn't sure how they were going to, how we were going to get the Mr. Knight costume, even though I knew we would from the trailers.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the image they've used the most in recent publicity with the gloves and stuff. And
now, how did you feel about that? How did you feel about the Mr. Knight costume?
I love the costume.
No, but I mean in terms of this show and how they did it.
I like it. I think it's interesting because it's Stephen. Do you know what I mean? Like it's because it's Stephen. I think that is an interesting interpretation. Because for me, it's starting to meld those two identities. Do you know what I mean? So it's Stephen,
right? It's halfway, It's
accepting that he's going to be, for this instance, he's going to be this thing. And what I do love is you kind of even get a nod to Mark's kind of Jewishness, if I may, like because when Mark sees himself or sees Stephen in the reflection, he goes, "Oi, what are we wearing?" It's a kind of interesting little.
No, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, there is another one as well. There's something to do. I think Rebecca was saying there's another little nod to his Jewishness, because that's something they isn't really mentioned a lot in the comics, but he is Jewish. You know, he
Yeah, I
is
think it actually, it has been brought up more. Like, I think Jed McKay's run,
yeah.
has certainly brought it up, and his
Mm,
relationship with his father. It came up a little bit in the Jeff Lemire run, and I do think it comes up from time to time, but it's certainly been pointed out that there aren't a ton of, like, sort of openly Jewish you know
superheroes.
superheroes. And I can't remember if it was you who was telling me this or somebody else, but commenting on how there's kind of some funny little moments where they kind of where they acknowledge it. And I think
Mm,
like Ben Grimm, you know always sort of sends him like a something for Hanukkah, or
yeah.
things like that. um
I'm not sure that was me, although funny enough, I was reading some Moon Knight stuff recently, and that is in there. I can't remember if it's Jed's run or the Lemire stuff that's in, but it's in one of those two runs, right?
Maybe I can't remember, but
yeah, it's great to see that stuff, and I don't know how they're going to explore it.
or if they're going to explore it
Yeah.
in the show. They might not. I mean, they've already got a lot to contend with, so I don't know. Maybe in this first season, maybe not, but we'll see. But they do have a whole lot of mythology to explain with this character, and I think it looks as though in the next episode we might be getting into some of the more of the kind of Egyptology stuff.
Yeah.
We might also get more Mark in the next episode, is what it seems.
And did you notice the Werewolf by Night reference?
Oh no, which
Okay, so there's a
go on.
shot in the fight sequence of the London bus from above, and of course, they all have the sort of I can't remember what they're for. I think they're so helicopters can see them from the air, but the reference numbers on the buses, which are made up of letters and numbers.
Right.
The reference number on the top of this bus was WBN 032, Werewolf by Night issue 32.
Right. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I really like when Marvel do stuff like that. I always kind of try and look out for things like that. Like, for example, I thought maybe the storage locker number would be something, but I don't think it is.
Right.
And
yeah,
but,
so I was actually pretty proud of myself for spotting it, because I never spot stuff like that.
Right.
But and of course, actually, what's interesting about that fight is, one of the things that's interesting about it, if I may, it is a lot like the first appearance of Moon Knight from Werewolf by Night 32, because what you have is this creature that can't communicate, this monster, this werewolf, this jackal in this case, versus this character who's kind of talking in this very hip kind of street talk, which Stephen was trying.
Yeah, Stephen was trying,
and it is a nod to that, I felt.
That's okay. That actually changes that scene for me, because I thought some of that was a little bit silly for me.
Yeah, I think that. Look, I think the reason it's silly, ultimately, and those scenes with Stephen are silly, is because we're meant to think he's silly. Like,
sure.
We're meant to treat him as we treat a lot of people with, mental illness. I think when you're out on the street, I mean, there's a lot of people I see in my area that are clearly have mental health problems, and quite obvious mental health problems, or learning difficulties, however you want to put it. And you got to have compassion, but I think some people find it difficult being around that stuff. I will confess that I find it difficult being around things like that. And I think, in a way, what the show is actually doing with their version of Stephen is kind of challenging you to go, how do you want to act at people,
Okay.
Okay.
And I mean, that's, to me, it was just some of the, like, it seemed almost out of character for him to, be sort of engaging with this fight with this,
but
this Jackal and like, you know, sort of you know, kind of street talking him and all that, you know, because you know this and it is obviously Steven kind of stepping up, you know, you know, the confidence, you know, has obviously kind of come with, you know, the realization that he's got access to this power. He's now wearing a costume, he's got super strength. But you know, to me it just I thought it was maybe, you know, that scene, until you sort of described it as like, oh, okay, actually, in a way that's comparable to his introduction in Werewolf by Night. You know, I thought it was a shade too far for me, you know, to think that he would be so confident as to be, you know, sort of smack talking a, you know, giant jackal.
Yeah, well, I think it's him trying to find his confidence, and to do that, you will do like, you know, you may do odd things, and you know, I think it's a lot of that, and I kind of I feel it's him kind of standing in his power. You know, he's trying to, you know, he's trying to summon, not the suit this time, but trying to summon the chutzpah, trying to summon the
courage, yeah,
to have this kind of battle with this weird creature, you know.
But he does finally, you know, give control to Mark. You know, at the end of it, he finally sort of relents and says, "Yeah, actually, I'm out of my depth here. Do what you got to do."
Just going back very briefly to the thing we were talking about how, you know, Layla can't see the jackal, no one else can see the jackals when they rise. It does make me wonder, can Harrow's acolytes see the creatures? Like, is that a thing? I don't know.
Don't know. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, actually, if we're doing asides here, I did want to briefly mention when we were talking about Lemire's run. I really thought those two henchmen who were posing as police officers, were spot on. Like, you know, sort of homages to
Billy and Bobby.
Billy and Bobby. One of them is even called Billy. You know, when they're conversing in the car, you know, one of them says, "Oh, you know, did you hear that, Billy?" Like, you know, it was obviously like inspired by those.
I didn't pick up on that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that may be the thing. And of course, we get kind of reveal about Mark having apparently assassinated all these people at a dig site in Egypt. But I suspect there's going to be a deeper.
Oh yeah, and Mark said that's not how it happened. You know, he denies. You know, he's you know, that's not how it went down. So I guess we'll probably find out, hopefully, in the next episode.
And you know, there is this thing of there's a thing of the outer verse as well, the other verse, whatever it's called. I think it's the outer verse where the gods were kind of banished to, and they used to be able to kind of voyage across quite easily to kind of enter their avatars. And part of Lemire's run is that they can't do that anymore, but Amit seems to have found a way to do it. But also, I think Amit and I don't know if I want to reveal this here, but as you go through that run, halfway through, both Amit and Seth, who are supposedly the enemies in that run, are revealed to be red herrings. And it's actually someone else who is
pulling the strings, right? And we don't want to say. We don't
want to say because it does kind of tie in with some of the things that Harrow was saying, and there is an interesting little twist about who the real enemy might be, and of course how that affects Mark and Stephen in the future. So we'll talk about
some of that. Yeah, some of that seems to be set up in this episode, you know, for sure. But we don't need to kind of get into that too much. I think we can kind of see how it plays out.
And we also have this idea that Layla might eventually become the Fist of Khonshu because Khonshu needs an avatar and has chosen her to be next.
Right. Seemingly to keep Mark under his thumb.
Yeah. But perhaps what we'll find by the end is if, you know, is it going to be, and I'm just throwing an idea there, is it going to be that Mark, to atone for the things he's done as a mercenary, will simply accept that he has to continually and perpetually be the Fist of Khonshu? Or will it be that Stephen decides that he's going to become the Fist of Khonshu, which might be an interesting move. Although I'm not sure an audience is going to put up with Stephen Grant. But there's lots of interesting things. But we're very early on into the process here.
Yeah. So for sure, I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out. And I feel like we've got a lot of setup in this episode. So I'm kind of thinking, hopefully, in the next issue, we're going to get more background, more, kind of flashback to Mark. I really want to see more Mark.
Yeah.
I'm ready for that. I'm kind of, like this episode, we saw a little more than we did last time, but I really want like a kind of Mark centric episode going forward, because I feel like, that's gonna really introduce you to Moon Knight.
Yeah.
We got that one chase sequence in the previous episode, which was very cool. But I think that's what I want to see.
I love the whole rooftop chase and stuff that you get in this episode, and I thought that stuff was great.
Yeah.
And like for me, this really has been the most entertaining MCU so far. Like,
okay, I don't know that I agree.
Okay.
For me, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I like a lot of it.
Shocked
there are
that
things
we're not
that
agreeing on this.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm playing it by ear, but for me, there are things that I like, and things that I haven't liked as much as other, as previous MCU shows. But I am along for the ride. I'm certainly, certainly looking forward to it week to week. I get really excited.
Yeah.
As soon as there's, going to be a new episode, I'm going to be, counting down to it.
Are you doing the early mornings? The very
No, I wish I could, but no, I have to work Wednesday mornings, so unfortunately, I cannot stay up till 3 a.m. and watch it as I did with previous shows.
Yeah, until like 8 a.m. or 8:30 or something. So I actually miss it, because by then I'm getting ready to leave the house to go get comics and stuff, and so I kind of miss it every week. There's,
I think one of the things that I think, I was thinking when I was watching it this week was that I might have liked to see it get given the like Marvel Netflix treatment, like a darker, more kind of, visceral take, because for me that's like closer in tone to, the character I know in the comics. And I wonder what that might have looked like.
I think, there was that extremely kind of violent run by David Finch's artwork on that we talked about last time, and I'm not sure that's the direction I'd like to see it go. I think that they handle the violence well by cutting away from it this time around.
It's not the violence so much as, as the maturity level and the, sort of the darker tone.
I feel the maturity level is there in the themes. It's just not there in the execution, because I think it's kind of a way to get you to accept some quite mind-blowing stuff. But the way it gets you to accept that is go, okay, here's an idiot. In just the same ways, when you watch Star Wars, you see Star Wars through the eyes of essentially a bumbling butler robot and his sidekick, who's actually his boss in a way. And I think that it is a kind of way to sort of we'll disarm you, but man, you're going to get some really interesting big concepts in this, and some quite weird and cosmic stuff, and it's going to get more weird and cosmic. I'm actually really enjoying it because of that. Because this show does feel like an adventure to me, and I'm really kind of enjoying it. And I will admit that my tastes often run counter to the wider audience tastes. I'm quite popularist. I like popular comics. I like kind of the same stuff that everyone else likes, but I think the things I like in them are different from the things that you would like, for example.
Mhm.
And I find little tangents quite interesting. I find sometimes mundanity in things quite interesting. I think, you know, there is a certain beauty in some of the places the branches go that aren't always the whole tree. You know, I'm not like I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm kind of, I feel like I'm making excuses for my own taste here, and you know, fuck
Well,
that.
yeah, but no, no, no.
I
That's
think that
not.
what I'm trying to do is say that I get fascinated by the inner workings of people and characters, and I think there's a lot of that in Mark, and I'm actually quite enjoying seeing Stephen in the show now, whereas before I wasn't. Yeah, but overall, like I'm in. Like I'm always going to be
Oh
in.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm in. I'm, but this is just my sort of quibbles as as they come,
Yeah.
because it's just a bit different to what I expected. Does that mean it's bad? Does it mean that I'm not enjoying it? No. It just means, oh well, I'm registering, sort of some mixed feelings, that I
Well, yeah.
is interesting for me, because usually you know me, I'm like, I'm wholly, sort of on board. uh you know
Mm.
uh Anything MCU is usually,
At,
just
at the detriment of any level of taste, I often find. But
never. Never.
taste, reasoning, or accountability.
No, it's just that good that, there's never usually nothing to
Balls.
complain about.
Balls. No, now I'm making you. Now I'm asking you to make excuses for your taste, and that's not what we're
I
in for.
wouldn't
But,
need to.
you probably do. They're not all gold. I'm sure this is an argument we can have
Off air.
I'm sure we will. So I don't think we've had a really good drag out big argument about any.
Not for a while. Not
Recently.
for a while.
Probably
Yeah,
due one. There's a
we
gathering
are
storm.
due one.
I think the way it's interesting to see the relationship between him and Khonshu in this, because that's slightly different from, like, even looking at the Lemire run. I mean, and we'll keep referencing that because I've just read it again, and you read it recently,
Yeah.
and I think it is the kind of, not to cast shade on anyone else's kind of run, but I think it's the kind of pinnacle Moon Knight runs for me. So
For
far,
me,
yeah.
I think it's just absolutely brilliant. And certainly, there's lots of really good Moon Knight, but for me, that's probably my favorite.
And the relationship with Khonshu, like Khonshu is a voice from the outer world there, and my son come home, all that stuff is just freaking awesome, and I love that. So it'd be interesting to see if they do that stuff. I don't know. I'm done on this episode now. I think
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
said
I think this was, for me, this episode was, it was a lot about setup. It was a lot about, kind of putting things into place to, propel the story forward. Hopefully, by the next episode, we're going to get some, more action heavy stuff, and more Mark Spector, and learn the story from his point of view. So
yeah,
I'm excited for that.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm definitely, this is as interesting and excited as I've been about a Marvel show in a long time. I mean, I'm always interested, and sometimes I'm even quite excited. But this one, I genuinely am kind of, boom, let's go, let's do this. I'm loving it. Yeah. So hopefully more of that next week. And certainly I look forward to talking to you again about it next week, Liz.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on, as always. Thank you so much to everyone who is watching and listening on the podcasts. Up to 112 subscribers now. Thank you so much to everyone who's kind of added the show. We'll do proper hellos next week to the new subscribers whose accounts we know the names of. There are some we don't. But yeah, thank you for jumping on, and I hope you stick with us. There's going to be more new stuff coming. There will be a new show starting next week called The Real Crush, which is all about movies that aren't comic book movies and all about TV that isn't comic book TV. And we're kicking it off with a special episode with Wang Yu, who runs is one of the people who runs the Fighting Spirit Film Festival, which is an action-orientated martial arts film festival. And they've got a show coming up in Birmingham on the 30th of April, and another one in early September in Stratford. So they've got a sort of mini festival in Birmingham at the end of April, and a big festival for a weekend down in Stratford, which is really great. And I'm probably going to be there selling comics.
Nice.
Which I'm really excited about in September. I would love to get back out and talk to people face to face and show you guys some comics and show you what I've got in the boxes here. There's a lot of good stuff. But there are a lot of comics available on the web shop, including Moon Knight comics. There is a link in the description for those if you want to jump on and buy some Moon Knight comics. I'm trying to add new stuff as quick as possible for the Moon Knight section, and indeed for the rest of the shop. So keep an eye. It's worth checking every week. Free postage on everything. So the price you see is the price you pay. That's it. Just gets sent out to you. So please do that, because that supports the channel, helps pay for the website. The Patreon also helps pay for the website. If you want to join in the Patreon, please do that. Liz, we still need to do our Patreon special for Spider-Man.
We do. Mm-hmm.
So we need to arrange we're doing 2 shows a week at the moment, so that's a bit
Right.
difficult. We will be back in your eyes and ears tomorrow with the comic show. Crushing Comics is back. And hopefully there won't be too many more interruptions with that. Sorry, there's a lot going on at the moment, but we'll be back on. Talking about all sorts of comics tomorrow. I don't know what comics we're going to talk about yet.
I've got a big stack that I can choose from.
Big week.
Big week.
Big week for first issues as well. But I'm looking forward to it. Liz, thank you for joining again.
Yes, yeah, indeed. This is another, exciting episode of Moon Knight. Looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next week. And hopefully next week we'll have a guest on. So
hopefully so.
Yeah, and there will be more guests popping up, but I'm not going to tell you exactly when or who. You have to tune in to find out. Guys, thank you very much for watching and listening. We love you. Thank you for all your support, and thank you to all the patrons who help make this show possible, and to everyone who's buying stuff from the web shop, and everyone who's watching. Thank you. Goodbye. We'll catch you next week on The Crush.
Bye.